Well, welcome to another edition of Fork in the Road. And have we got a special guest this week? She played netball for Australia. She won 2 gold medals at the Netball World Cup and a gold medal at the Commonwealth Games. And then just for good measure, in September 2018, she switched over and she goes, you know what, I'm actually going to give this footy thing a go, and was signed by the mighty Collingwood Football Club. She's got a book coming out, and I think the title very much suits her. It's called No Apologies. That is a very, very suitable name for you, Shans. And the thing that I would say, and I did say off air, I was going to give Sharni a very big compliment. I've got 4 girls, and if they attack it like Sharni does with her attitude towards their sports, she'd be pretty proud, I reckon, because of the way she goes about it. So very big welcome to Sharni Layton. How are you?
Oh, thanks, Corey. That was a beautiful introduction. I feel overwhelmed. That was really nice. And how old are your daughters?
16. My eldest is Zoe, and she might go down the path of you that she can pretty much do anything. She's probably a bit of a smart ass like you, in a good way, that she can play. She loves the netball, and she's just started to discover footy. So she could go down the same path as what you did.
Oh, but how exciting that she now has the opportunity to do either or. Like, that's just the best. And I must say, my dad was also a footy dad, so we do get the smart ass side from our fathers.
Well, it was funny when she actually called me and said, oh, yeah, I'm pretty keen on playing football. But then I suddenly realised that North Melbourne had an academy, and then I went, hang on, she can actually go father-daughter. So not that I'd ever push her one way or the other, but the sheer thought that she could end up, having some sort of involvement at the Kangaroos would be pretty special for anyone. So
absolutely, and it's just such a great opportunity. I love that they do that. They don't do it in netball, but I think if you've got obviously the genetics, it makes it really family orientated, and it also just brings hope and inspiration to the kids as well. Like, oh, I want to do what my parents did. So yeah, we'll definitely have to keep our eyes peeled. That's for sure.
They now that you've said it, is that one thing that's disappointing in netball, or they should bring it into netball? You think of all the great names over the journey that have played netball for Australia and then have had girls. I think that'd be a fantastic thing, and I reckon you can lead the charge on this, Sharni. You can go to with the idea and say, well, why don't we have, you've got all these famous netballing names in Australia that their daughters could actually go and play for their club.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I probably will go to them. I know that we had those conversations within Collingwood when I was playing netball there, and that's why I ended up going to Collingwood, because I loved that they had just an open mind to be able to change things up. Netball's very set in its ways. I love it, but it's very traditional. They're really hard to budge. So when Collingwood was coming in, I was like, oh, this is great because we can start to shake up the system. Unfortunately, they haven't had the greater success. However, they did say that they would have been open to, and they would be open to having that rule.
Well, I reckon you can lead the charge with that, Shans. I reckon it's a great idea. But now, your CV that I just rattled off, it's a pretty impressive CV. Did you set your sights? Where did all this ambition come from a young Sharni Layton? Now, I remember many moons ago, you did remind me that you did come into the Levison one day when you were just a young pup. And also, now we actually have to get to the bottom of something funny. Now, you know what I'm going to say, Sharni, don't you?
I've been waiting.
Now, Sharni actually thought that I was... Sean McKernan is obviously my brother. Sharni had probably put a few years on me, and she thought that I was Sean's dad.
Well, can I just say, I was actually going to say, because you're up in Queensland, so you've got a bit more freedom. How are the RSLs up there? Are they good?
The surf clubs, yes, they are. I'm very fond of the surf club and getting...
No, I was just saying out. So let's just clear this matter up, okay? Although I play football, I don't follow it clearly. And I thought, oh, McKernan, there's a McKernan that plays for Essendon. So if I'm going to do this podcast, maybe I can get my fiancé a jumper and be like the best fiancé in the world. And so I was 16 when I first started in my first Melbourne team, and we would go to your pub, the Levison, after every game, and we loved it. Always well behaved as a 16-year-old, of course. Of course, yeah. But were you retired at the time? For some reason in my head, I just saw you as being older then. But I didn't realise that you were so young, such an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I'm probably still young now, I think. Nah, but no,
You are. I ended up Googling and I was like, oh, I thought you were at least in your 60s. I was
I
like,
just made sure that you saw that bit in there about the MVP, Sean. I hope you got that bit in there.
yeah, absolutely. So I was highly embarrassed when you sent an email back saying, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. I'm actually your brother. And then because I didn't know how old Corey was, I was like, he could be like 19, 20. I was like, you're Corey, Sean. And then I went back and Googled him and I was like, oh crap, he's 30. So I've just failed all round. I'm an all round football failure. And that's why I'm new to this world. So
Yeah. No, but look, as I mentioned before, you actually have achieved, you've got a pretty impressive CV with all the things that you've done. Did you ever think in your wildest dreams, when you were starting off when you were younger, you'd end up doing all these things?
no, and I think that is the best lesson that I took out of it. And you were probably similar, that when I was growing up, 4 or 5, I'd always be like sitting and watching, whether it was football, the Commonwealth Games, the Olympics. Like I just loved all sports. And I remember watching the Commonwealth Games and Olympics in particular and thought, oh my God, I just want to represent Australia. I just want to wear the green and gold. They were the biggest heroes in Australia because we're such a huge sporting country. And I'd see them getting interviewed and I'd go, I want that to be me. And I didn't know how or who or why. And majority of those athletes were males that I was watching. But isn't it funny, as a kid, I didn't even comprehend gender. Like I just saw them and thought, oh, I can do that too. It didn't have to be a female for me to think that I could do it, which I thought I think now is pretty cool. I didn't think anything of it at the time.
Yeah.
And then as I was coming through the ranks, I was actually doing horse riding and I wanted to go to the Olympics for equestrian. I loved Amanda Ross, Andrew Hoy, Matt Ryan, and they were just my heroes. I'd watch them jump over these 6-foot jumps. Dressage is just beautiful, obviously, and that was my goal. And so whilst I was playing netball on the side and having a bit of fun with it, I was horse riding and going to go to the Olympics. And it wasn't until I was 19 or 20 that, I'd made a few state teams in netball. I thought, oh, I should probably give this a crack. And that's when the sport swapped over. But it was just, point being, I never thought I would have made it, but it was just through following the processes that it just took me there. Obviously with a lot of hard work, sacrifices and everything that comes along with it. But not in my wildest dreams would I have thought that I achieved what I have and continue to, because now I just want to keep going.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have thought. Now, how tall are you? You're 6'2", aren't you?
Yes.
I wouldn't have thought being 6'2" is really conducive to riding horses. I wouldn't have thought, Chance.
You wouldn't think so, but that's because you're probably more into the racing industry than eventing. Whereas, obviously a bit bigger than a jockey. But when it comes to eventing, well, my horse, I've still got one today. She's 17 2 hands, so she's quite big. I go for the Irish sports horses because they're big and stocky. But it's actually better to have long legs because they wrap around the horse's belly and it's easy to ask what you need of them. Whereas short people, because all riding is all in the legs. So for short people, they find dressage really hard because they can't give the cues as easily as what a tall person can.
Yeah. Now, we did have a bit of a joke off air about this, but you moved 13 times in 10 years. You might have had more clubs than Tiger Woods.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. It depends. Are we talking about clubs or?
I'm talking about clubs.
Yeah, isn't it funny? So my journey was a rough one, but I wanted to make it. I wanted to make it at the top level, and I was always on the borderline. I was never I was tall, which got me into teams, but I wasn't super talented. And so it was more my attitude and my aggression and my work ethic that got me into a team. And I wouldn't complain if I was on the bench. I'd still encourage the team, which is at the end of the day, the difference between netball and football. Or footy, everyone generally gets a go if you're in the team. Whereas in netball, you've got those 5 people that sit on the bench. So, I really struggled. I was a bench sitter for 6 years, and then I ended up moving to Canberra and became a part of the Australian Institute of Sport so I could improve my development, because you can only get so far if you're not playing. And then an opportunity arose over in Adelaide. So I then took that, which was my third team. And I was there for 4 years, but then I kind of got a bit stuck again. And for me, I'm always thinking outside the box, like, how can I get better? Because I was playing National League, but I wasn't playing internationally. So I was like, I want to be the starting goalkeeper from Australia. If I want to do that, I need to get better. So then I just called up all the coaches around Australia and said, hey, how do you think my game is? How do you think I can get better? And the person who had the best answer was Rob Wright in Sydney. So I ended up moving over to the Swifts.
It's and so where was the moment for you where you then thought, hang on, I can actually really play the game? Was there a particular game that you can think back on where it made you believe that you were good enough to play at the level?
Yeah. So as we are fork in the road, that real kind of fork in the road moment to whether I continued with netball, because my aim was to play until I was 21, play in the Australian 21 team, quit, and then go back to horses. But then obviously as I was making more teams, I was like, oh, maybe I need to give this more of a crack. And when I chose to move over to Adelaide, I didn't know if I was going to make it or not. And I told myself, because I was 21 at the time, 22, sorry, I was 22 at the time and I started when I was 16. And I thought, if I sit on the bench for another year, I'm just going to quit. Like, you know, we trained too hard just to be a bench sitter, and I wasn't enjoying it. And so I went over to Adelaide, put absolutely everything into it. And fortunately, my time came where I got to start playing. And there was this one game I remember, and I played, well, we won the grand final that year. So I was like, oh my God, I played in a grand final. Like, I just couldn't believe it. But I still had doubts about myself as a player. And then that following year, I was playing goalkeeper and I came up against Irene Van Dyke, who was New Zealand's best shooter, like, well, very well known in the netball world. And in one quarter, oh no, for the whole game, for three quarters, I kept her to like 3 or 5 goals or something, which was just ridiculous. And it's one of those moments where if you want to achieve that, if you go out saying, I'm going to keep her to this, you never do it. But I had a process in place. I know that she likes this side. I need to keep her there. I know I need to do this, so I'm going to do this. And by following those processes, she got dragged at 3/4 time. And I was like, I just got the world's best shooter dragged. Yeah. Like, high five. And so that, I think, really gave me hope and confidence in my ability, that if I had the ability to do that to her, then with more work, I had the ability to do that to any shooter. So I think that was a real springboard moment for me.
And obviously, yeah, because of that, in 2011, you got the call up to go into the diamond side. How awesome is it? You touched on it before about that dream about playing for Australia. Unfortunately, when you play Aussie rules football, you very rarely get to put on the green and gold. But how amazing is it? And I've asked this question of several people. Like, I mean, when you play for Australia and hearing the national anthem, how amazing is it?
Oh, it's just the best, and I can't describe it. I think first of all, the best moment is getting your dress. When you get, like, I've got goosebumps. Like, when you get a dress that's green and gold with your name on the back of it, you're just like, what? Like, is this real? You know, like, you kind of put it under your pillow and sleep with it at night. Like, it's just the most prized possession. And we have this really beautiful tradition at the Diamonds where an older member of the Diamonds will introduce you and your first playing dress before your first game. And as a rookie, you don't know that it's going to happen because it's a tradition that you do on the first night that you're in camp. So I had Natalie Bomberto, who was my captain at the Thunderbirds at the time, you know, just do such a nice talk and then present me with my dress. And it's a really magical moment. And then when you get named in your first game, and I was over in New Zealand, like, it's just, you're torn. It's the most nerve-wracking experience, but it was just so supportive. You're just like, oh, this is going to be the best thing ever. And then that moment when you stand on a transverse line, you're looking up at the Australian flag and whoever else you're playing against, you're arm in arm with, we call it the sisters. We're sisters in arms. So arm in arm with the sisters singing the national anthem. That feeling never gets old. You get goosebumps, you get pride because you know that you're not just playing for yourself, you're playing for your whole country. You know how much it means to everyone that is a fan of netball and anyone that supports sport in the country. So it's a really overwhelming experience. And I ended up playing for the Diamonds for 7 years in the end. And it was something that, like, that feeling of standing on a transverse line and singing the national anthem, like, it never went away.
And just on that, I wouldn't have thought that you would have any issues with getting fired up for games. I wouldn't have thought that would be your problem. How did you go from that, hearing the national anthem, and then having to calm yourself down and then having to focus and focus on the game? You know what I mean?
Well, I do a lot of meditation. I'm very spiritual, namaste, and I channel energy. So I like to, the bigger the crowd, the better I played, because I could channel that energy within me. And I actually really struggled, I'll get back to that, but when I moved to play for Collingwood, because we'd had no supporters and no crowd, it really affected my game because I didn't have anyone there to get me up and about, and I never played netball for myself, so I struggled. So going back to being in the Diamonds, funnily enough, when I was in the change rooms, I would sit and meditate and just kind of drag in as much energy as I could from the room, and like the music that I was listening to, and really focus on what I needed to do for the game. And then the same thing when you stand on that line to sing the national anthem, although it's quiet, like a downtime, there's so much energy between the rivalry. Like, I would stare down, like, so you stand opposite each other in netball. So I would stare down my goal shooter and I would just not take my eyes off her for the whole 2 national anthems, just to scare the absolute shit out of her. Like, just, I'm going to ruin you today. I'm going to absolutely destroy you. And so my game started from when we stood there. I channeled all of that energy in on her to know, even if she gave me a good run for my money, I was going to make her life a living hell for the next 60 minutes. And you kind of channel that, and then you get out on the court, and as soon as that whistle went, it was just bang, it's on.
And just on meditation, I probably started doing it, I would say 3-4 years ago. I think it was after I went to Tony Robbins, but then...
Yes,
I've got a particular one which I use. I mean, there's a couple of different ones I use every day now, but I never ever miss. What would you suggest for a lot of people out there? There's a lot of people doing it tough at the moment. I know what a benefit is to do actual meditation. Can you just tell everyone how good it is for you?
Look, it's just the best. And there's a really great book which I suggest. It's called Into the Magic Shop, and it is a really good book because it's about a young boy who goes into a magic shop because he loves magic, and the lady behind the counter goes, I'm going to teach you this amazing magic you would have never ever learnt before. And over a 6-week period, she teaches him how to relax his whole body, how to quieten his mind. And, you know, at the end of the day, she's just teaching him meditation, but it is magic. But he didn't realize that at the time until he got a bit older, but, you know, it was this age-old ancient tradition that she had taught him. But it's a really nice way to get into it and just to learn the neuroscience behind it. But for me in my everyday, at the end of it, like, we have all these thoughts inside our heads and they just yell at us, but they're not true. So you need to learn to actually listen to them and figure out, am I making that up? Is that real? Or am I thinking again, and learning how to silence that? I think especially in times like these is really extremely helpful. So if you then flip that into game mode, it just got rid of any of those self-doubts. Like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to have a good day, like a good game today. Actually, you're not going to service me today. Out you go. You know, and then what else comes in? Oh, no, you're not going to service me today. Out you go. So for all of us that are at home at the moment thinking, you know, like, it is tough. Like, it is so tough down here in Melbourne. And I'm really struggling myself. And that's the importance of doing yoga and meditation, just to keep me going. But yeah, it just helps silence those really struggling thoughts and help you focus on what you can do. And just being in the moment, surprisingly, is going to help you a hell of a lot.
And when did you first start doing that? Because I am jumping ahead. I was going to ask you this a little bit later, but you, I think, had your own like sort of battles with mental health. Did you start doing the meditation once you'd sort of that had happened, or when did you take us through what you went through?
Look, I'm not a perfect meditator. I don't do it every day, and I almost used it as a tool for success, which isn't great because I should have used it as a tool for health, which it realistically is. But I started doing yoga and meditation because the flexibility for an athlete is gold, just helps minimize the risk of injury, plus the meditation side that comes with that, probably in about 2012. So it was the year after I'd made the Australian team, and I was just really getting into becoming, you could say, as an athlete. And at that time, because I still wasn't playing in the Australian team, I had to really focus my thoughts on being positive and putting the team first. So I had to be able to park those thoughts of, I want to play, why aren't I on the court? Why is she better than me? And to learn how to park those thoughts and think, nope, this is who we're playing today. If I get on court, I'm going to do the best that I can. And use it in that way was really, really beneficial for me. And so over the years, I've done Tony Robbins as well. Highly recommend to everyone. He's amazing. And then I've done a lot of meditation camps, love going over to Bali and doing retreats. I love temples, like all of that stuff is just so grounding for me. It's funny, I'm quite opposite to what I think people think that I am like. But yeah, and then when we then get into that mental health side, my issue is that because I did it all to succeed, I wasn't maintaining myself as a human outside being an athlete. I put all my eggs in the one basket. And then I just collapsed in a heap. Like I wasn't happy, but I should have been happy. Like I was a world champion. I was a Commonwealth Games gold medalist. I was International Netballer of the Year. I was voted the world's best netballer ever. Like, so I couldn't comprehend why I wasn't happy. Like I couldn't, because I should have been. And so then the expectations that you put on yourself to should be happy, I should be happy. But I was missing community. I was missing family. They were down here in Melbourne. I was missing servicing that side of me that needed to go on a holiday and meditate, because in netball we play for 12 months of the year. So domestically we play from January to July, and internationally we play from July, August to December. So once you make the Australian team, you play for 7 years straight. And you have to fill out a wellness form on here every day of the year, and you get in trouble if you don't. You're getting monitored like Big Brother for 6 years. Like it eventually just does your head in, to be honest.
Do you find like, and isn't that's with your phone, that's one of the things that you nearly want to disconnect from. So how do you do with filling out, like, I know that I actually keep a journal, and whether it's you just write down anything, there's no structure or rhyme or reason to what I do, but I found it incredibly helpful. But the more I can stay away from the phone, how did you go with when you had to fill out, like, because in the end, the temptation, I've got it, now I'm going to look at social media and other bullshit that's on there.
Yeah, exactly right. And oh my gosh, Corey, I got in so much trouble over my career because I just didn't do it. Like I was just, Sharni, you haven't filled out your wellness today. Yeah, because it's making me unwell. So I'm not going to do it. And so that a part of the reason, obviously, in naming the book No Apologies, is because, I've frustrated a lot of people over my career, but I knew what served me. And to the best of my ability, I did that majority of the time, but I also sacrificed a lot, which ended up ending in the mental breakdown. But you're right, like being on my phone and having to think about whether I'm well or not, like highlights that, oh, I'm not really well. Like, so it's good and it's bad. So it's good to do during a period of time, but I ended up talking them into, if I'm on a holiday, let me be on a holiday. Let me turn off my phone. Like it's so important for your mental well-being.
And what did you do to hit the reset button? I know that you mentioned that, where was a bit of a moment for you where you had to go, hang on, I've actually got to change this because I'm not actually happy with how I'm going?
Yeah, so I think, to be part, it is good to notice how you're feeling and not to ignore it, because I ignored it for so long that I ended up having a really bad mental breakdown. And once I looked it in the face and had to deal with it and say, I'm not well, I was really, really not well. And when I looked it in the face, I didn't realize how bad I was. So I was like, I'm just going to take 2 or 3 months off, look after my mental health, and I'll be back. Anyway, 6-7 months minimum it took me. Once I acknowledged how sick I was and I listened to how sick I was, like I couldn't get out of bed for 3 months. I was just bedridden. I didn't have any feelings, like I didn't have any emotions. I had social anxiety. I couldn't have done this with you, because what happens when you get depression is that your brain stops firing. So you'll say something to me now, I'll link that to a story, and then I'll then tell you that story. And that's how social interaction works. Whereas when I was sick, that firing didn't happen. So you'd say something to me and I'd go, oh yeah. Like, it's so awkward. And you just think you're dumb. You're like, I'm so dumb. Like, how can I not think of anything? But it's an illness. Like, your brain isn't firing to connect the dots to be able to have these conversations. So I started seeing a psychiatrist. And once he taught me all of this, I was okay with it. And I was like, why don't people talk about this more? Which is obviously why I talk about it, because this had been happening to me for over a year and I didn't know that they were the signs of depression. So yeah, after, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months, I started getting a little bit of feeling back. You know how I like to describe, if you see a sunset and you really love it and you can connect with that and you're like, oh, that looks beautiful. Like, I would look at something like that and just be empty. And I was like, that looks pretty, but I can't connect. I can't feel anything. Like, it was so sad. So after 5 or 6 months, I started getting those feelings back. But then I was like, oh, now I actually really want to start listening to what my body's telling me and what I'm enjoying and what I'm not enjoying. And for the first time, I put myself first as a human, not athlete Sharni. I thought, don't care what kind of sport I'm playing. I just want to be healthy and happy, you know, because during that time, all the suicidal thoughts come in, like it's horrible. And so then when I came out the other side, I was like, sport, this thing over here isn't worth my happiness anymore. And so that's when I decided to retire, because I was just like, actually, I don't enjoy it. It doesn't bring me joy. It doesn't make me happy. We don't earn enough as female athletes for it to be a serious income worth hanging around for. And I rate happiness over money any day of the week anyway. But yeah, and that's when I decided to retire. So it was probably a solid 6 months of psychologist and psychiatrist weekly. And I still see them, obviously. And then meds helped me massively as well, reconnect the wiring in my brain and getting all of that back on track. So it was a huge process, but a great one that I learned massively from. And now I definitely live more so from my heart than my head.
Yeah, it was funny. We actually, with the walk with me, which you're obviously doing on Monday morning at 7 a.m, we'll see you there. But we actually spoke about that on the walk the other day, that if we do a physical injury, we'll go to the gym and we'll get a program, you know, and that's a great way of actually getting better. But we should approach it exactly like what you've done. And someone mentioned it on the walk on Monday, that you approach your own mental health exactly the same way. You know what I mean? So what, that if you have to see a doctor or go and see to someone, just approach it like that you're doing it to get better.
Absolutely. Every day of the week. And I think, especially in everyday life, it is so normal now and it's totally okay. And you can get mental health plans to help make it a bit cheaper. But also I highly suggest, like, find the right person for you. Like, if you go to a psych or a counsellor or a doctor and you don't connect with them, don't think this isn't for me. You will find someone for you, but it takes work. I've had 8 psychologists over my lifetime career, and I've connected with maybe 2 of them max. So you need to find the right person that gets your personality, that you connect with, and they will help you. But don't give up if you haven't found them yet.
This episode is brought to you by National Make Good Solutions, experts in taking your commercial property back to the day it was built at the end of your lease. You mentioned before, so was that little hiatus period, was that when you were thinking in that sort of down period where you'd finished netball? When did the thought in your head go, hang on, I'm actually going to give this thing called Australian rules football a go?
Yeah, so it's really funny. So like I said, I just wanted to enjoy life, and netball, like, so I took the 7 months off, and my very first training session back, like you do the same training in netball, whether you're 13 or whether you're 32, like all the training sessions are all like the same. The netball court doesn't get any bigger. There's not much variety to it. And so my very first training session back, I stood on the transverse line and I was like, oh my God, if I have to run from one side of the court to the other and back one more time, like I'd rather punch myself in the face. Like I was just like, it was just so tedious. And it was at that point, I was like, I'm done. But I had to get through a whole season, which was very testing and trying at times. But every day that I rocked up to netball, all the AFLW girls were there and they were just like the spice of life. They were so happy. They all worked in jobs outside of footy. They'd all talk about like the most funny random stuff. Like they were my personality. And I was like, so I'd rock up to training, sit with the AFLW girls, strap my ankles, and then I'd go and train with the netballers before I left. And so when I quit netball, and I'd been having like sly comments with the AFL like coach as well, kind of being like, do you need a player? Do you need a player? Kind of, yeah, come over, like bantering. But I was like, no, like really, like, do you want me to have a go? And, and he was like, yeah, all right. So when I retired, I went up to him and I said, look, I'm happy to come over and give it a go. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be good or bad. And to be honest, I don't care. Like, I just want to play with these girls. They're so much fun. I want to learn new skills. So, you know, some people love doing the same thing for their whole life and being really good at it. But I love doing everything in life and experiencing everything. And I'd experienced everything about netball, but I'm like, I want to experience this footy side. And also I felt that I could contribute to teaching them how to train with the right intensity, those high performance behaviours that I'd been living for the last 8 years. There was so much I had to give to these girls that was more off the field than on the field, that I wanted to feel that paying it forward rather than that take of being a good athlete. So, so that's how it all came about.
And then look, for those people out there that haven't been to a netball game, if you haven't, go and take a look. And the reason why I tell that story is that if you haven't seen it, when you see the girls, the ferocious way they attack the netball, did it hold you in good stead in footy, that see ball attack type thing, or was it just a totally different experience? Like, what were the bits from netball that you could bring across from a game sense? And then there's obviously, which is just the awareness on the field.
Yeah, I thought there would be more crossover than what there was, if I'm being honest with you. Like, when I got over there, I was just like, because in netball, you go really hard at the ball, but no one's allowed to come at you. So if someone does hit you as you're going for the ball, it's an accident. So they're going to try and avoid you. And I had a few bad falls in netball, but not really. Whereas in football, if I'm going full at the ball and someone else is going full at the ball, and no one's pulling out, like, you're in deep shit. Like, so I could pretend to be tough in netball, but footy's the real deal of, can you cope with that physicality? And I don't lie about it. I've said it in the public. My coach always says, stop telling people, because he's like, I hate getting hit, but I'm like, Steve, it doesn't matter, because even though I don't like it, I'll keep putting my body in those positions. Like, I'm not going to stop because I don't like it. Like, it's fine. But yeah, when I first started playing ruck, and I was like, I've got this chick running at me, trying to knee me in the guts. Like, that sucks. Like, who does that? That's not even it is tactical, but I'm like, that's not skillful. Like, go for the ball. Like, I was getting really petty about it all. So that first year, the girls just paid me out. I was like, I'm wearing a long sleeve in winter. I'm not going out in the rain. This is shit. Like, I was a real prissy. But yeah, they toughened me up pretty quick. But the pros that did cross over, I think, is more so just my experience in sport and being able to have that mental experience of seeing a field. So if the coach says, this is the game plan, even though I don't know football, I can remember that game plan, store it in my mind, and then I can direct the girls where to go on the field. So even though I don't have the experience, I know what we're meant to be doing, and I have the mental capacity to play, but also direct, because I've had that experience as a goalkeeper in netball.
And how big of a shock, obviously the fitness of playing AFL football, how big of a shock was that all of a sudden you went from being probably a real power burst type athlete into, I had to turn into endurance and then being able to play in the ruck for 4 quarters?
Oh, yeah. Like the 2K time trial was, I would have, once again, preferred a slap across the face any day of the week. Like, I have a really low lactic acid tolerance, and so I spew after every football session. And it was just so funny because, once again, I just thought being, because you have training age as an athlete. So obviously my training age as an athlete is like 15 years now. So I was like, oh, my body will adapt, which it has now, but it did not adapt in that first 6 months. Like, running and doing all of that was so tough, because if I was just marking, kicking, having a bit of fun, it was fine. My skills are great. Maybe not great, but good enough. But run a 2K time trial and then do that. I couldn't mark the ball. I can't kick anyway. So trying to kick after I was tired, and to be able to execute those skills under such excessive fatigue was a real mind opener for me. So yeah, it's been really tough. My whole body shape has changed. My whole ability to train has changed. But I actually enjoy it more because in football, and you can argue this if you want, but you can't run at 100% for a full football game because you just max yourself out. So you actually need to know how to pace yourself. Whereas in netball, it's 15-minute quarters and you're 100% for those 15-minute quarters. Because obviously you go max effort, the ball goes down the other end, it comes back, it's max effort. So being able to pace myself is actually kinder on my mind than having to continually max effort 24/7 in netball.
Yeah. And the way that you developed across the season, like how much, I know you'd have your standard training sessions that you do, but how much, just let everyone know out there, because I reckon you would have done a shitload of work, of extra work to really get yourself up to speed. You know what I mean? You would have,
yeah,
everyone an insight of how much, because if you become good at anything, you need to do extra. So how much extra were you actually doing?
Yeah, pretty much every day. So when you look at when I was playing netball, we became professional. So we were training 5-6 days a week, 5-6 times a week, and for a longer period of time. When I came over to football, because the girls are still working, we do Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, some Saturday mornings. And so the workload on my body had actually gone down a lot. So I had the time and the mindset to be able to go, okay, I need to be doing at least 2 to 3 extra sessions a week here to be able to get myself up to scratch. But it's so funny, and you're going to love this. So Tarkan Lockyer, who's just my favourite human of all time, he was still working at the club at the time. And at the start of footy, I wasn't putting in the extra. I was just like, I just need to get into it, get the flow, and then, I'll get better. And I was not getting better. About a month had passed and I was so bad. And he pulled me aside one day when I was in at the club, just having a kick, not doing anything major. And he goes, Shans, how do you think you're going? And I was like, oh, pretty bad. And he's like, yeah, some would say that. Yeah, you're doing pretty bad. And I was like, yeah. And I'm fine with that. Like, I'm all about honesty, so it's all good. And he goes, yeah, so I don't get it. What's going on? And I was like, well, what do you mean? I'm new at the sport. And he's like, don't give me that excuse. He's like, you know how to train, you know how to get yourself better, and you're not currently doing it. Pull your finger out. Enough's enough. If you want, I will be here Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I will do an extra half an hour training session with you every day to help you get better. And I was just like, oh, my heart just melted, because he could see that I was kind of in that struggle zone of not knowing whether to fully commit myself or not, but he knew what I was capable of. And by him just saying, you know what, I want you to get better, but I'm going to volunteer my time to help you get better. I was there half an hour before, 45 minutes after, I did it, so he gave me that, not an excuse, but that reason to want to try and get better and start to see the improvements, which then commits you on even more. And he did all of those sessions with me throughout that whole first year and then obviously continuing on into that second year. He's working with the AFL now, so I'm absolutely heartbroken. But very grateful for him in those one-on-one sessions, because at the end of the day, not even the AFL girls can do that because most of them are working throughout the day. So yeah, that was what fast-tracked me so quickly.
Yeah, because you could see like you tap ruck work and the way that you follow up. I think the follow up with you, because you're naturally aggressive, it become a real trademark of your game. You could see you just hunting after the ball and just picking up those, those easy possessions and really, creating a path for your teammates. So what other things were you working on with Tark? Because you could see your ruck work that it actually really improved out of sight.
Yeah, massively. So the main stuff that I did with Tarkin was the body work, because that was the biggest thing. Like, knowing one of the hardest things to learn was the flight of the ball, because I was so used to us being a metre away, a bit more obviously, but that netball pass is so short and sharp. My reaction time was really quick. But in footy, I was leading too soon. I had to learn how to slow everything down and how to use my body to create that space and time so that, that contest became a bit easier for me, my kicking on the run and all of that stuff as well. But I think the bonus of coming to a new sport is that I had no expectations of how a ruck plays. I didn't know how a ruck played. So in netball, you tap the ball and you chase it up. It's just what you do. And then you pass it on to the next person and then you drive down the court to get that next ball. So in my head, I was just like, tap the ball, chase it up, pass it off, go again. And I didn't have a transverse line saying you can't run over here now. So, I just wanted to be, and because I wasn't the most skillful player, I wanted to contribute to my team in other ways. So I was like, I need to get the ball to someone who can do something with it. So I'm like, I know I can't do anything with it, but I'll chase it and exert all of my energy. So by the time I get it to someone else, they're fresh and then they can execute properly. And then in regards to the ruck work this year, that was just a huge thanks to Brodie Grundy. So he did a few sessions with me. And we're wired very similarly. So I had someone else trying to teach me and I was a bit confused and I was like, this doesn't make sense. And then Broads pulled me aside and was like, see this, do that, see this, run here. This is how you tap. And I didn't know, even to this year. So I've been playing for a year. I come into this season and I didn't know I was allowed to run over the halfway line. Didn't know.
What do you mean, at the centre bounce?
Yeah. I thought because of netball, I thought I was only allowed to run up to the line. So I was running up to the line, stopping, and then jumping to tap it. And they were like, what are you doing? And I'm like, and I kept on getting kneed in the guts because I was stopping so I didn't cross the line. And I was like, I'm not allowed to cross the line. And they're like, who told you that? And I was like, no one. Like, you don't know what you don't know. So after I realised that I could cross the line and take their space, or I could hang back and wait for them to tap it to me, or do you know what I mean? So that's where my mind comes in handy, because I can see and adjust a lot quicker than what I could before. So yeah, Brodie's just been a huge help, because he's just like, what is this? Do this. And then I'm someone that can apply really quickly because I've had the training to be able to learn how to adapt.
Yeah, it's not a bad person just to learn a few tips off.
And that's the thing as well. Like, at the end of the day, I'm in a very high performance environment with the best coaches, so I have the best of the best teaching me from scratch. So someone who doesn't have that environment isn't going to improve at that rate because they don't have those coaches around them. So, but you still have to apply yourself to take on that knowledge, be okay with being shit. Like, I went from being the best at my sport to pretty bad that first year to getting better in the second year, but you have to be vulnerable enough to be shit at something new to improve at that and get there.
And what else do you still want to get out of playing this journey that's been AFL football for you? What else do you still want to get out of playing the game?
Well, for me now, like, I'm getting everything out of what I wanted to get out of it. And it's the camaraderie. I love footy. I love the girls. And I'll play for as long as I can because I just love it. Like, I really enjoy it. I don't want to achieve anything. Like, if we want a premiership, amazing, but that's not why I'm playing. Like, I'm just playing to be the best footballer I can be for our team. And I want our team to get the best out of themselves. And if we're doing that, then that's ticking all of my values boxes that I now live by. And more so, it's now getting a balance of which is why I went to AFL in the first place, to be honest, but it's because I can have a balance of life and sport. So for all the girls that are like, we want to be professional, I'm like, no, like have a balance with life. It's so much nicer. It's good to have a real job and, you know, have that balance of other communication and talk to people about things other than sport. And yeah, I really love it. So obviously I'm writing my book at the moment. I work at MLC in Kew. I'm the head of netball for the grammar school there, from junior to high school. And I'm creating my own sports academy, which will start up next year as well. So I've got a lot on the plate, but like I said, they all tick on my values boxes and make me really happy. So I don't feel like I'm doing that much.
Now, speaking of other things, you must really enjoy being on with the boys on bounce. It seems like you've fitted in hand in glove with the boys on there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love them. They're so great. And so I was living in Sydney for 3.5 years in the end, and I was on the NRL shows. I was on Wide World of Sports, a few other funny shows. But when I was in Sydney, like they all just take the piss. It's hilarious. Like it's a real chilled out media vibe, and obviously that's my vibe. So I just fitted straight in. And then I moved back to Melbourne, and I knew it was going to be tough cracking into the media world down here, especially because it's AFL dominant. Yep. But then when I actually got down here, and I was like, oh my God, this world is so serious. Like they need to loosen off their ties and just chill out. Honestly, like there's others, like football's great. I love footy, but it's like, you know, you don't need to be so serious about it all the time. And so I kind of just accepted when I got back to Melbourne. I was like, you know what? This style of media is not for me. I'm out. And then I just got a phone call from my manager, and she said, hey, there's a show called Bounce. I'd never heard of it because I'd been watching NRL for the last 4 years. There's a show called Bounce. Do you want to give it a crack? And I was like, oh yeah, send it through. I'll have a look at it. And then, watched an episode, and I was like, oh my God, it's funny and it's fun. This is great. It's my vibe. And the boys are just beautiful. Like I call JD my dad. Like he's so funny. He's so beautiful. And I just love having a laugh, and we can all take the mickey out of each other and not be too serious. So I'm very grateful and then I didn't realize until recently how lucky I was to have landed that gig. I'm sure there's plenty of people that would love to be on that show.
It is. It's definitely it is my favourite footy show. Now, just on that, it must have been incredibly tough when I think it was only a year ago that we lost Spud. How hard was that being on Bounce and having the great man and what had happened with that?
Yeah, it's sad. It makes me teary. I'm probably going to get a bit teary because I haven't really talked about it this year. But yeah, it was really sad because he was just such a beautiful human, and we were so similar. But from the moment I started on that show, he just took me under his wing, and he knew that I'd had my mental health issues, and he openly talked to me about his mental health issues, and we just really connected on that level. And I'm just really sad that he just couldn't find another way out of it. And I think it's just sad when people that bring so much joy to others, like they bring, you look at Robin Williams and all these people. Yeah. Like they light up millions of people's lives, and it's just like, I just hate it that they can't see that light within themselves. And I think personally, like I felt that for a period of time, but I'm quite selfish now in comparison to what I used to be. Like I'm more about my own happiness now than I am of others, but these people just sacrifice their own happiness to make other people happy. And so it's just such a huge reminder to obviously talk about it, to seek help, to do whatever you can in these situations, and especially in these trying times. Like I know that's why you're doing your 7 a.m. walks, Corey, which is just awesome because of how many people are taking their lives at the moment. But I think at his funeral, the biggest thing that I took out of it when Wayne Schwartz was talking from Pucker Up, and he said, when people say to me, am I fixed? Are you better? Are you better? It's like, I am me. This is me. Like the best of it, the worst of it. Like I don't need fixing. Whether I need meds, whether I need to see a psychiatrist to get through my day, that's what I need to get through my day. And that's okay. I tried to go off my meds a few times because I was like, oh, I don't want to be on them anymore. And then like I just plummeted so quickly. So if that's what my brain needs to function, then I'll take it, So don't feel like you need to be fixed. You are perfect the way you are. And I just want to share this story quickly. I remember like when I first started seeing my psychiatrist, and he's freaking phenomenal. I love him. And he was like, I called him one day and I was like, Ranjit, I was happy this morning and then I was really sad this afternoon and then I was happy again and now I don't know how I feel. And he's like, whoa, like just calm down. He's like, Sharni, everyone has highs and lows every day, but you just pay attention to it. Stop paying attention to it. He's like, just, it's okay to be up in the morning and down in the afternoon. And I was like, why aren't I, we have this unrealistic of, why aren't I happy all the time? I found that extremely funny. So I try to I just don't judge it if I'm having a bad day now. Like I'm just like, oh, today's a bad day. I'll get done what I can, but I'm not going to push myself. And if I get more done tomorrow, great. But also if I don't, whatever, like let's all just be a bit kinder to ourselves and start showing a bit of self-love.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. Now, Charles, this hour is bloody flown by very, very quickly. But I think on behalf of everyone, I think we've got everything and more out of this. I know that, hearing your journey, all your stories, your laughs, a few tears as well. Yeah. I think it was like peeling back the layers and we got all the great stuff out. So on behalf of everyone, a big thank you. And I do mean that even with my girls, if they can have that attitude towards their sport and their careers, I think they'll go a bloody long way. So you've done a great job, and you should be very proud of yourself.
Well, thanks, Corey, and thanks for these conversations. They're just great, and it's so good for everyone to get so many understandings from so many different people. Just happy and willing to talk about it. So you're doing a great job as well. So thank you. And
I will see you 7 a.m. Monday morning, young lady.
Yes, I'll see you then, old man.
All right, thanks, Shans.
No worries, mate. I'll see you. I'll see you Monday.
Bye.
Bye.